Hello viewers and welcome to this newly named series called Driver's Dialogue. This is a series where I basically talk to other drivers about what they're doing related to their cars. In this case, we're going to be talking to a man who is rebuilding a flood-damaged Porsche 996. Once again, this video is mostly talking, so honestly, you should have this more as a background tab because if you're watching the video itself, you're not going to see that much. So please watch it in the background, or if somehow this video blows up, just read the comments as you're listening on. But if this is your first time here, I invite you to give this video a like and give this page a follow, and stay tuned for more videos to come related to this style. This is Driver's Dialogue, and here's the interview. So we right now have our interview subject here on camera. Why not he go and introduce himself real quick? So what is your name and everything like that?
Well, my name is Jose Ramon, and I'm based here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I'm the owner of the Porsche 996 that has sparked some controversy online. We're in the middle of the restoration. It was a severely flooded vehicle. So it's I think that we have a very interesting story to share. So I'm glad for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess we're gonna start. You mentioned like there's a lot of controversy. Before we get to that part, I guess where did everything go wrong in a way in terms of like this idea coming together and you deciding to start on it? What was the inspiration? How did it all end up starting, basically?
Well, several years ago, I actually owned a Porsche 911, an air-cooled. It was actually an 82, which I sold to make. And, a few years went by without me having the Porsche, so I always knew that I wanted to come back to the Porsche family. And my eyes were always set on the 996, which is the first water-cooled 911. And I always had this vision. I always wanted the car in a very specific way. And, there's always the option of buying a car that is fully functioning, ready to go. Anyone can buy a car. Very few can restore one. And the problem was, if I buy a fully functioning car, I basically am going to have to strip this car completely to get it to where I want it to be. So then I was like, well, why don't we just restore one that needs a little bit of help. Anyway, I came a little bit of help, yeah. I came across this car online, and it was one original owner. It was an older man, professor, that lives in Key West, Florida. And this car actually was a victim of Hurricane Maria in 2017. So the car was flooded completely all the way up to the roof, and needless to say, it was deemed total loss. So I bought this car sight unseen. It was shipped up here from Florida, and the reason why I took the chance was because I knew that at the very least, obviously we got the car at a very, very reasonable price. At the very least, I knew that if the project didn't go according to plan, then I was going to be able to get my money because I could easily sell the shell to anyone that wanted, that would be interested in racing. We're looking for an island as a race car. So, once we, and the reason why I know this information about, the previous owner was because as I started the construction, I came across a car with personal information in it. And, now we have Google, started Googling his name, and I started learning more about him, and eventually I was able to come up with the person who was insured, which actually was his wife. Anyway, I ended up calling the insurance company, and I got a full report of what actually happened to the car. And then eventually I was able to do a Carfax and get a little bit of a history of it. So, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, but I think at this point it's really irrelevant because the car was completely stripped. We have to start searching parts for the most part. We try to save as many original parts possible, but there's some that you have no choice but to replace them. And we have found a few donor cars. We stripped the car completely inside, all the main harnesses, the sensors, airbags were replaced. And the good thing about this car is that it's considered the last analog Porsche 911, which is a '99, because basically the most sophisticated thing that the car has is a set of airbags. There's no stabilization unit, there's nothing. So that was good in that regard. So we just started sourcing these parts everywhere, PCA Market, eBay, everywhere that we could actually go. And the idea was the idea still is to, we're probably going to end up spending around the same amount of money that we would have paid for a fully functioning car. However, when we get there, we expect to have a much better car, meaning the interior is going to be much better, the engine is going to be rebuilt, suspension is going to be also upgraded. So that we have several things that we want to do in terms of the engine. The engine right now is in the machine shop. We're trying to determine whether we want to increase the size of the pistons or are we just going to keep it stock. We're thinking about coilovers. We're thinking about we're trying to make a GT3 inspired version of it, hopefully with a fraction of the cost.
So I guess I'm just trying to think where we can, like, because you've touched a bunch of different parts of the car right now. Actually, I've looked through some of the photos, and the first part I want to ask about is the interior, partially because obviously flooded interior, a lot has to be like redone. But I was looking at a lot of the photos, and I saw like basically how different it ends up looking now. And one of the things I hated the most about the 996 Porsche was the interior, especially when it was in that like gray color. I just personally did not like it. But seeing yours, it looks so much newer and everything. So, like, how did you do it? What did you do? And, like, how did you get around bugs in that aspect?
Well, the car originally is Arctic Silver with gray interior, and I didn't really care about that combination. So I decided to go with black interior. So the only thing that is original is the dashboard, which was resprayed, and also the cluster. But everything else, the carpet, the steering wheel, and all that were replaced. And a lot of those parts were actually reupholstered. As I mentioned, we try to save as many parts, but the car originally came wrapped in leather, and I know that a lot of people, one of the criticisms for that year is because it was kind of cheap looking. They didn't use a lot of expensive materials, obviously because Porsche back then was having some financial issues. Mm-hmm. But the idea was to actually make it look nice, and I think that the end result is pretty good. I have gotten a lot of compliments about it. It's a combination of genuine leather and Alcantara. So I think it looks much better now that in black rather than in silver.
Yeah, I think
or gray.
Yeah, I quite like the looks of that one as well. Did you like have a shop do like all the upholstering and stuff? Were you able to do that?
Well, in order to keep the cost down, I have tried to do as much of the work myself. However, I know my limits, and I know when it's time to say, okay, I gotta find somebody else to do this and that. So, in terms of the upholstery, I hired someone to do the work. It's not done yet. I have a pair of Recaro seats that are going to be reupholstered to match the existing interior, but everything else is done. I have the headliner, hasn't been installed yet, but In terms of the interiors, it's just the two seats, and that's about it.
That's interesting because I know I've like always looked into like various like upholstery, do it yourself kind of things, and it's always seemed like really hard. And I've talked to a lot of people who do it themselves, who like to work on their own cars, and they're like, no, I never touch that. I just send that to the shops because it's too hard. Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, I know how to do basic stuff when it comes to upholstery, but I wanted something more elaborate, so it was time for me to hire someone, and I think that they did a great job with that. I think it looks great, and as I mentioned, they've gotten a lot of compliment in terms of how it looks inside. The before and after, and if you check our page. Um, there's an actual picture that illustrates the before and after, and I think there's a quite a significant difference.
And real quick, Justin, I'm sure most of you viewers will listen to this for the full video, but in case you don't, what is the name of your page, real quick?
Our page is drown_Porsche.
Okay, drowned Porsche. All right. So back to the rest of the interview. So let's definitely talk about the electrical system because electrical gremlins, that's definitely something that happens with flood vehicles. So like, how did you end up getting around that?
Well, yeah, everything had to be removed, and I think that our Instagram account kind of illustrates the process. There are pictures there that you can see that everything was completely removed. Fortunately for us, we were able to find a donor car same year that had engine fire.
Okay.
So we got the entire harness system from it. So everything was replaced. We removed everything, the dashboard, everything that you can think of. It was removed, and then actually we replaced everything. We cleaned everything. Everything was done properly. When it was time to actually connect the battery to see, okay, what's going on. At that point, we didn't even know what the original mileage was. So when we connect everything and we connect the battery, we realized that the car at the moment of the incident has 76,400 and some miles. So for its age, it's the mileage is not as bad.
So it almost seems like a tad bit of it was plug and play in a way with some of the replacements.
Well, yes. In that regard, I think Porsche makes it easy for people like us because it was basically plug and play. Most plugs were different or color coded, so you could not miss those. So it was pretty easy in terms of what part of what we did also was we documented as we were undoing to make sure that we had any documentation for reference purposes in case we forgot how things were. So we documented that, but as we were actually doing it, we realized, this is not as complicated as we thought. It's pretty straightforward.
So now let's move over to the powertrain side of things. Like, how was it like when you first got in the car, and like, what are you trying to do on that side in terms of your own changes?
Well, in terms of the powertrain, when we took the car to our mechanic, we realized that water got inside of two cylinders, and we were trying to hopefully save the engine, but at one point it was just like, no, it just doesn't make any sense. Let's just do it. Make sure we do it right. In terms of the transmission, it's a 6-speed, and right on top of it, there's actually a breather. And because the water obviously got higher than that, we thought the water got in there, but then when we actually drained some of the fluid out, we realized that the water never made it. So the transmission is good to go, but the engine is now completely apart. We just decided that we're just going to address the normal issues that everybody talks about, the IMS, the RMS, but we're just going to rebuild the engine completely.
Okay, and then when it comes to the engine rebuild, what have you decided what you're gonna do with it? Is it gonna be the same? Are you gonna make various changes to it other than like the problem areas fixed? What do you plan on doing with the engine?
Well, the idea is to hopefully increase horsepower, but doing it in a way that the engine will remain a reliable one. We don't want to create something that is going to break on us. I mean, this is a car that is going to be driven. It's not going to be a daily driver, but it's going to be driven. This is not a Ferrari that is going to be a garage queen. This is a car that is going to be driven. So, if the idea is that, if I decided to just go and head down south to Florida, I have a reliable car that, I know that it's not going to be a problem. So it has to be done right. But at this point, we're determining what makes sense financially, because the truth is these engines are kind of maxed out in terms of the horsepower that they can make. You can do things to increase, normally from factory they're around 300 horsepower. You can do things to increase the horsepower maybe to 320, 340 at the most. But after that, there's not really much you can do about them. And, you have to think about how much you're putting into and the horsepower you're going to get. I mean, and if it's a matter that you could save, let's say $3,000 to $4,000 by not having 20 horsepower, I think that that's something that we will consider. And the idea of actually having a fully stock engine is still there. We haven't decided whether it will make sense financially to start upgrading things, because again, we still have other things that we want to upgrade, like suspension, for example. We're thinking about coilovers. So that we kind of have to pick our battles in terms of how we want to do and spend the money.
Okay, all right, and then related also to the powertrain, the transmission. So, what have you noticed with that? What might be changing with that?
Well, the transmission is going to remain stock, and as you can see on our page, when we removed the transmission, we came across a very rusty pressure plate. I don't know if you saw it, but all that has every part, the external part, and the transmission has been replaced. So the transmission is going to be stock, is very close to the GT3 one, with the exception of 2 gears. And this is a car that we're not planning on tracking it. It's not going to be something that we're planning on tracking it. This is going to be like a country road kind of warrior car, if you will. Mm-hmm. So we just want to have a car with a solid engine that can provide some fun.
Okay. So, and one thing you said a few times is the suspension. So, like, what was the condition of the suspension when you got that, and what do you plan on changing with that, or what ideas are you thinking of?
Well, right now, the two struts are gone for some bizarre reason. We noticed there was some fluid coming out of the struts, so we're thinking about coilovers. We're not sure whether we want to go with Bilstein. I think that's what we're considering right now, but definitely coilovers, because when you think about the difference in terms of money-wise, the difference between coilovers and buying struts and new set of springs, it's not that much. So with coilovers, you have, in my opinion, a much better suspension in terms of what things that you can do with it.
And then cosmetics. What did you notice about the car cosmetically, on the outside at least? We talked about the inside, and what might you be changing or fixing with it?
Cosmetically, it's actually in very good shape. Just the normal wear and tear, maybe some dents here and there, and some rock chips. But overall, it's actually in pretty good shape. So the issue is not much cosmetic it's not an cosmetically. I'm having a hard time saying that word. But anyway, it's more like mechanical than anything else. So it's in very good shape.
So like no repaint planned or anything like that.
No, this was, I was surprised. It was one owner, and he took good care of it. I mean, we, as I mentioned before, we got the service history, and it was well taken care of. It was a car that was well taken care of. Unfortunately, it was a victim of other circumstances. But
I forgot to ask earlier, what was it like first taking delivery of the car? Like, what did you observe about it? And also, how did it smell?
Well, it did not smell like Febreze, I'll tell you that. So when I got delivery of it, my wife didn't even know about it. Yeah, I bought that. That's a whole nother story. Anyway, the car got delivered, obviously on a flatbed, and even when we were removing the carpet and all that, water was still stripping, just dripping water. It was interesting. You had to wear gloves and a mask and just toss everything. So it was quite of a smell, I have to admit.
Ooh. Now, did you end up finding anything from like anything that belongs to the previous owner in there?
Yes, I found a CD, a few coins. That's always classic. But I did find it was actually a medical insurance card.
Oh.
Yes, and that's how we find out who the previous owner was.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So with the name, because I didn't have, this car was actually sold in auction and someone bought it, and we bought it from that person. So we're technically the third owner, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So at that moment, I had no idea who the previous owner was. And, when you're dealing with a car like that, you want as much information as you can. So we were lucky enough to find out at least who the previous owner was. And then, you start Googling, and we got a good amount of information. And then we reached out to Copar, which was the auction company that was involved. And we got some information from them, and that's how I found out who the insurance company was, and ended up calling the insurance company. And they tried to tell me, this is kind of like confidential information, but I already had all the information. I said, there's nothing confidential here. I can actually provide you with full name, addresses, and all that stuff, phone number. So at that point, they were like, okay, well, if you have that information. And they did send me a report, the report that they generated when they actually deemed the car a total loss. So we found a CD, I think it was Eagles, that band, the Eagles.
Yeah.
So it kind of told me, okay, this was kind of gave me an idea of what the previous owner was like. But everything was just tossed straight to the garbage.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah.
So next question then. What was probably what part of the moment during the rebuild so far made you feel like the most optimistic, feeling like, all right, we've got this, or all right, this may not be so bad?
Just like everything else, you have good days and bad days, and sometimes you kind of second guess things. But once you go this far, you can't do that. Once you're in, and you just have to roll with the punches. But so far, we have been lucky, I guess, to find parts at a very, very, very reasonable price. You have to take your time and shop around. But I think they're very, very optimistic in terms of how it's turning out and the money that we have spent so far. I think that so far we're within budget still, which is a good thing. I mean, these projects can go can get out of hand pretty easily. So, but so far we're good.
Okay, and what has been a moment that like almost pushed you to the point of like, all right, throw in the towel, we're done with this thing?
Well, I guess my wife. When obviously questions were, where are you getting this money from, and are you crazy? Is this thing ever gonna run? Uh, do you have a very expensive toolbox? Things like that. So, um, I mean, I knew what I was getting into.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to have patience. I mean, it's again, it's not a day. It's not going to be a daily driver. So I have my truck. So we'll get there whenever we get there. But we're going to make sure that it's done right. No, I think that that's a mentality that you have to have. It's going to be a project that is going to take some time, and you cannot just second guess yourself. If you ever find yourself doing that, then don't start it in the first place.
Oh yes, how long has when did you get the car, and how long has the project taken so far?
We got delivery of the car in November 2017, so just roughly over 2 years. But I have to admit that there have been times where the project had slowed down significantly, especially during the winter time. Because up here in the Northeast, well, you're in Pittsburgh, you can relate to how brutal winters can be. So, and then you also have, your own life, work, other responsibilities. You try to go as fast as you can, but also one thing that, will determine how fast you can go on a project is, when you're looking for, secondhand parts, you have to think about when they're going to become available, and also the pricing. So a lot of the time has been impacted by that. Time is not really an issue for me. I'd rather take the time to find the parts that I would need within the budget that I'm after, rather than just getting it done yesterday, if you will. So what we're hoping now is that we have an engine completely assembled and ready to go, late spring, early summer. That's the goal.
Okay, and then after the engine, what else is there to do with the car?
Well, after that, we're intending to get the seats done, and then obviously we have to address the suspension, because right now it's not even safe to drive it. If we were going to drive it, assuming that we would have a fully functioning engine, it's not even safe because the way the suspension is. So in order will be to finish the engine, to make sure that we have a running engine, the seats, and then the suspension. And then I think from that, we're just going to take a little break financially to bounce from it. And I have other things that in my garage. I actually have some upgrades like 996 twin turbo calipers. That's something that is going to happen at some point. We're going to upgrade the brakes. There's some modifications that we're going to have to do, but it's doable. I have some GT3 exhaust that's sitting there that eventually going to make it to the car. But that's kind of like phase two. We just want to have a car that is drivable and obviously safe to drive.
When do you think that the project will be like fully complete then?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting question because I think that this is going to be an always evolving project. So if the opportunity to present itself, we can get, my dream would be I think my dream is to have an authentic GT3 engine in it, but those are very expensive, and I don't know if that ever is going to be even possible. But I think that it's going to be an ever-evolving project. It's never going to be like, okay, we're fully done, we're done. Maybe, I don't know. It depends. I guess I would have to see how life unfolds, and see what my other priorities. But I think that once we have the engine and once we have the suspension the way we want it, then we might tackle, the aesthetics of it. Maybe a more aggressive look in terms of adding side skirts and a front bumper and the wing and things like that, but that would be secondary.
So now the question of when you posted it in the Facebook group, and to provide a bit of context for you viewers, this is basically how I ended up finding Josue here, is that he posted it in the Porsche Facebook group. I'll link to that somewhere. And yeah, the reaction to it was pretty interesting in there. I didn't read through every comment, but I know you got a notification for just about every comment, so you're way more familiar with it than I am. So I guess explain whatever happened there.
Well, the way it happened, I was actually part of a Porsche group on Facebook, and for some reason I got kicked out of it. I still don't know why, but anyway, then when I realized that took place, I went to look for other groups, and I came across this group. It's called Porsche, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I, just the usual stuff, requested admission and answered the questions, and I was granted admission. And it was my very first posting. It was kind of like, hey guys, here I am, and this is who we are, and this is what we're doing. And I posted, I think, 3 or 4 pictures of it, which one of them being the car afterwards floated with all the mold. It is a quite impressive picture. When you first look at it, it's like, oh my God, I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole. But then also, that picture was posted with other pictures in terms of what we have done so far, and the contrast before and after. And there were a lot of them that were very encouraging. Awesome, looks great. How did you do that? That's amazing. Thanks for saving a Porsche. Things like that. Others were a bit skeptical. Some people have some health concerns, which I understand. In terms of how do you handle that mold and all that stuff. So it actually sparked a very interesting discussion. I think this happened, 3 weeks ago or so?
Something like maybe. That, yeah.
And I still get notifications of people commenting on the posting. But people were asking questions. How do you do this? How is that even possible? Why would you do that? You're throwing money at, down the drain, things like that. But I think that a lot of those comments were just spontaneous, and they didn't actually read the whole thing. Because I was actually answering, I tried to answer most questions, and it got to the point where it was actually too much. And I was like, you know what, I can't answer every single question here because otherwise it'll take forever. But it was interesting how some people thought the pictures were fake, that I actually made them up. Some people thought that there were 2 or 3 different cars, that I was just somehow posting those to gain attention. But no, I can assure you that it's just one car. It's the same car.
Huh. So what message do you have to both the people who are like supportive of the build and those who are skeptical of it?
Well, people, some people say, because flooded cars have obviously, that stigma. Because, I understand that, but it also, you have to take into consideration what car you're restoring. I mean, if this was perhaps, let's say, a 2012, 13, 14, or up Porsche 911, then I would say no, because as we know, those cars have all kinds of sensors, all kinds of electronics, and it just doesn't make any sense financially. But this car was, again, the last analog of Porsche. It doesn't have a lot of electronics, so it's very mechanical. So it's something that we thought, okay, this can be fixed, the right way, to the point that our project has sparked interest from Porsche. Yes.
Oh.
Not sure if I mentioned this to you before, but anyway, I am a PCA member, and for those who are members, you know that you do get, as a part of your membership, you do get a monthly magazine. And I got mine, and this happened maybe a year ago or so, and I'm going through it, and towards the end it says, the editor, if you have an interesting story, we would like to hear about it. And I was like, oh, I think we have an interesting story. So I reached out to the chief editor. And I think within seconds, I kid you not, I got a response back from him saying, oh my God, that's very interesting, because we were planning on doing the same thing with a Boxster. Because remember that 2016 and 17 was very brutal for cars. It was very brutal. There were a lot of exotics being flooded down in Florida, Texas,
yeah,
because of the hurricane. So, and everybody, a lot of people feel, if it's flooded, don't even bother. So they were actually thinking of doing the same, but somehow it didn't happen. So they were very intrigued to learn about our story. So to make long story short, they sent a photographer from Panorama to take pictures as the engine was actually removed. And a first article was actually posted on our region Rising Tower chapter. That it basically tells a little bit of the story and what has been done. So they're interested in doing a series of articles as we move along with the project. So there's definitely interest in there. I think it's a pretty interesting story. The idea is, can it be saved? And I think that we feel pretty convinced that we can. So far, all our efforts indicate that. So it's a good thing.
Huh, wow. So this is the point where anything I haven't asked, but you're itching to say about the build and stuff, just go ahead and say it. Anything I didn't quite touch on that you feel should be addressed?
I don't know. I cannot think of anything right now. I think that, I feel very strongly that, if a car, we obviously are car guys, and we enjoy this. And if there's a chance that you can actually save a car, why not? This car was certainly destined to be parted out or crushed, and we were giving it a second chance. And 996s were mass built. We know that, so I don't think that there will ever be a collector's item. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. We'll see, but I don't think that will be the case. But the truth is, these cars are getting parted out. They're getting destroyed. It's so maybe 10 years from now, we'll be able to appreciate the fact that we saved one. And then I think that we're going to improve it, significantly. It's going to be a fun thing to drive.
Awesome! I can't wait to see it within the next year or so. Hopefully on the road. So this now, what are your social media profiles? And feel free to even if you want to shout out some of the shops that have even helped with this build. Feel free to mention them as well.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. Obviously, this is a collective effort, even though I'm trying to do as much of the labor myself. But, there are times where you come to a point where you have to consult someone, or, you simply just don't know or cannot do it. So there's actually a local shop that was crazy enough to say, yeah, I'm in. And it was great because we needed the technical support. German auto specialist in Norristown, PA.
Norristown, how cool.
Yeah, it's not too far from here. It's maybe 10-15 minutes from where we at. So I knew that I was going to need a mechanic, and I started kind of shopping around for mechanics, and then I came across German auto specialist, and it was kind of funny because they work with all kinds of German German brands, Volkswagen, Audis, and all that stuff. I just called and said, "Who's your Porsche guy?" That's Nick. Can I talk to Nick? Sure. And he picked up the phone and say, "Okay, this is I introduced myself and I said, this is our story. Is it something that you might be interested in?" And he was, "Oh, well, let me come by and check it out." So he came to he came